pretty ladies waving from the dock. Heave away, me jollies, heave away. And if we do return to you, we'll make your cradles rock. Heave away, me jolly boys, we're all on the way.
That was from the hit musical Come From Away, now making its first stop in Boston. It tells the true story of how the small town of Gander, Newfoundland became a beacon of goodness in the hours after September 11th. That's when Gander took in and sheltered some 7,000 passengers stranded when their planes were forced to make emergency landings. Kevin Carolyn, you're in the show. Mayor Claude Elliott, you were there. You're not in the show, but you were there in real life.
Yes.
So let me start with you. This is an extraordinary story of what your town did to these stranded passengers, thousands of people. The town nearly doubled overnight. Where did it, how did it bubble up? How did it surface, this hospitality?
It's something that we've always had. This hospitality is nothing new for us. It's the way of life. We've been for hundreds of years. We survived in the province by helping each other. And on 9/11, you know, that fateful day, there was nothing we could do to help the people in New York and Pennsylvania and them places, but there was a lot we could do for the 7,000 people that we had in our community.
What's the scope, as you describe it, of what people in Gander, Newfoundland did to take care of these passengers?
People took people into their homes. We used every facility which we had in the community, you know, every church, every organization, the schools, and put people into them. And the whole community was involved. So we had, I think the population at that time was around 9,300. We knew that we had 7,000 people from 95 countries. But the majority of the people were there from the United States. Their country was under attack. They needed love and compassion as much, you know, during that difficult time.
Well, the show is an amalgamation of characters from that day, real stories. You play the real story sitting right next to you
Yes,
among your
indeed.
characters. Tell us how you get there and what it represents on stage.
I mean, on the onset, when we had first started rehearsals in New York, we had a treasure trove of information in terms of interviews, and written interviews, transcripts from city council. There was a lot of research to dive into. And I was able to, you know, get a sense of who Claude was as best I can be, you know, and paint a picture.
Well, I'm curious, where's Gander on the modesty level here? So, so here you do this. You don't ask for anything in return. You definitely didn't ask for it. I do understand that a lot of passengers sent money to the town afterwards, which was just so kind. But when you heard this was going to be a musical, what did you think?
Well, when I was approached by David and Irene,
who wrote together, the married couple who wrote the musical.
Who wrote the show, and they told me they were going to do a musical. I was the first to admit I had never seen a musical, and I'm trying to visualize in my mind, how are you going to make a musical out of sandwiches, soup, and blankets, and pillows, and that? And I figured that they were going to end up on welfare. I told them that personally. I said, because I just couldn't see it happening. And how you're going, but the difference was they knew what they were doing. They knew how to do it.
1986, the first female American captain in history. Suddenly I'm in the cockpit. Suddenly I've got my wings. Suddenly all of the pilots are testing me. Well, they can get their own drinks.
Well, then there's the sensitivity quotient. You have September 11th, which still carries a great scar in this country and around the world. And then to know that this is going to be treated in musical form, again, not the actual events, but something related to it. How is that dealt with?
Early on in rehearsals, I was feeling very emotional of some of the moments that we're portraying. And you can't really lay it out like that. It seems it could be seen as very, you know, a little self-indulgent, you know. And what Chris had said is that every audience member that steps into that theater has a connection to that day in some form or fashion. And they will do the heavy lifting for you. There's this great moment that I have that you mentioned about after the 5 days, you know, everybody went home. Claude sits down and he turns on the television and he just starts crying. I mean, he hadn't let himself cry the whole time.
So, and that happened to you. That was your story.
Well, for 5 days I never went home. Only go home long enough, probably get a shower and come back. And if I got a few little winks, it was at the office, in my office. But we were just going on pure adrenaline. But in them dark days, there was a silver lining. And I always say that in the midst of a storm, there will always be something good come. And hopefully that this musical is touching people from all around the world, and to show us that we can love each other. We can be kind to people.
Well, I guess a lot of people wonder how that happens. Was it just magic that happened there?
That's just the way we are. If you come to Gander, and if you were stopped in Gander and you couldn't get a hotel room, somebody would bring you into their home and keep you. We also realized that in downtown New York, you may not get in somebody's home, but that's our culture. That's the way that we live there.
Well, I have to ask you, I do know something about you, which is that you walked away from performing marriages in Canada because you don't believe in same-sex marriage.
Right.
How do you reconcile everything that you just talked about with that decision that you've made?
Well, you can disagree with something. You don't have to agree, but you still love people. Because you don't agree with marriage doesn't mean that I don't love the people. Because, that's their way of life, and I'll love anybody, regardless of their sexual orientation. I may disagree with you on something that you may do, but I'll always love you, and I'll always respect you and do that. So disagreeing with someone, that's different than pure hatred, and I don't think that there's anybody in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador that hates anybody regardless of their sexual orientation or what it is. May disagree, but we'll bring them into our homes and we'll treat them like our own family.
Tell me about the music of this show, which I know is so ingrained in Canadian music and in culture and heritage itself.
Sure. This music is very reminiscent and holds a lot of qualities of Irish music, certainly in terms of the instruments, and the baron and the pipes that we're playing and the fiddle. But there is such a great sense of belonging and fun. I mean, it's like our show, but it's the musical feel of that show, of compassion, of warmth and welcome and fun.
Mr. Mayor, you said this was the first musical you saw.
Yes.
So what was your reaction when you finally saw it? First of all, what are these people singing instead of talking?
When the show was over, I knew they had hit a home run. Everything was accurate. The wording might be changed, but everything you see in that musical happened.
Mayor Claude Elliott, thank you so much. Kevin Carrollin, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure.